Hi, good morning. This is Bob Hatton. I hope you have a good day today. God bless you. We've got a big question here in Germany at the moment, and that is, are we going to experience summer again in this year? It's become very, very cold and wet outside. But anyway, let's press on with our studies of the Acts of the Apostles. We've come now to chapter 11 in the Acts of the Apostles. So that we understand what's happening, I would like to read the last verses in chapter 11. So let's begin to read in verse 27 and go on to verse 30. And the Bible says, now in these days, prophets came down from Jerusalem to Antioch. And one of them, named Agabus, stood up and foretold by the Spirit that there would be a great famine over all the world. And this took place in the days of Claudius. So the disciples determined, everyone according to his ability, to send relief to the brothers living in Judæa. And they did so, sending it to the elders by the hand of Barnabas and Saul. This first phase of ministry that Barnabas and Saul had in Antioch, it ends with these verses. Prophets come from Jerusalem and do ministry in the church, and Barnabas and Saul, they leave the church for a short time anyway to go and visit the church in Jerusalem. So prophets came from Judea, from Jerusalem, in Ephesians chapter 4, Paul tells us that when Jesus ascended into heaven, and as he was doing so, or maybe just afterwards, he gave gifts to men. And to some, he gave them to be apostles, to some to be prophets, to some to be evangelists, to some to be teachers, and to some to be shepherds. And we talk about a fivefold ministry. There are 5 different ministries mentioned in Ephesians chapter 4. And God has given these ministries so that we can complement one another, so that we can help that the church is built in a very strong and sturdy way. And we've discovered in recent years that these 5-fold ministries are very important. Now, at this time in our story, a group of prophets came from Jerusalem, and they came to complement what was happening in the church in Antioch. They came to help the ministries that were there. They came to help them to build. And what I think is very important, that what we read, is that they came from Jerusalem. That doesn't mean they came from the city. Of course they came from the city, but that's not, I don't think that's the onus of this word, but rather they came from the church in Jerusalem. They were sent from the church in Jerusalem. They had a commission to come and support this new church in Antioch. Of course, Barnabas, he had also come from that church. He probably knew them anyway. But what I think is important, especially for prophets, but for all the other ministries as well, is that they work under authority. They're people who give account of the ministry that they're doing. They're not just people who are not tied into anywhere. They're not people who come without being under authority, coming to do their own things, but they come being sent from somewhere else. Paul speaks in 2 Corinthians chapter 3 about letters of recommendation, and it was already starting right at the beginning of the church, that people were travelling around and asserting that they were this or that without any authority, without being sent, without any commission, and they were bringing heresy and all kinds of problems into the church. So one of my values would be, if we're looking at ministry coming from outside our own local church, was to make sure that they're being sent and that they're coming as people who are under authority. Of course, in our day and age, one of the big dangers that we have is ministries in the internet. Prophets who are giving their messages and teaching in the internet. Prophets who are not, I don't even know whether they really are prophets, but they're not under any authority. They're not accountable, and they're saying this is the word for this city or that city or Germany, and this is going to happen. And I feel this is very dangerous. In the first or second century AD, a book was written, a letter was written. It's called the Didache, the teaching of the Christians, and there's some warnings there about people who claim to be prophets, and there's some rules there. And it says if they come and they stay for more than 3 days, then they're false prophets, and if they come and they ask for money, then they are false prophets. Now, I don't know whether this criterion is really right to match onto the prophetic ministry, but it shows that there were people who were traveling around who didn't have a bona fide prophetic ministry. So that's just one word of warning. On the other hand, I love this prophetic ministry, and I was leading churches, we invited prophetic ministry many times into our church, and it was kind of a highlight. It was a moment when God would set the points on a track so that we keep on going in a certain direction, or even change direction. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 14, I wish that you would all prophesy. And of course, we have prophesying, we have a prophetic ministry, and then we also have the ministry of the prophet, which are really three different things, but they're going in the same way. And Paul says everybody, each and every believer can prophesy. Moses said, I just wish that all of the people of God would prophesy. But then as we go through 1 Corinthians chapter 14, Paul also gives us some rules and some guidelines and says this is how you've got to handle the prophetic ministry. It's got to be tested, it's got to be proved, it's got to be weighed to see what the content is, and so on. But it's a very valuable gift and a very powerful weapon in the hands of the Church of God. With these words, I'd like to finish now. I hope you have a good day. God bless you. You're Bob Hatton.